Happy to be joined with my very special guest this week. You know her as Lacey Underall from Caddyshack and Yori from Tron, and upcoming Pensacon guest, Cindy Morgan. How are you today?
Hi, good to be talking to you again.
Absolutely. No, we were actually just talking off air, but a little trivia fact, a little Derek Diamond Experience trivia fact. So I used to do this show back in the 2013 to 2017 called the Nerd Cave Podcast. And the first convention that we ever went to was here in Pensacola, and the first celebrity I ever interviewed was you. So it's a cool little reunion.
That's pretty cool. I don't remember you as well as I remember the guy who dressed up his squirrel and had it on his head, and somebody came in with a duck.
Well, I can understand that being a little bit more memorable.
It just wasn't stuck in my. I mean, the squirrel had clothes, so
oh, good. Good.
It was dressed up like its owner, so yeah, that's sort of stuck in my head. But good to be speaking to you again. Yes, the Nerd Cave. I remember that name.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Awesome! Yeah. No, we did that show for, I think it ended in 2018, but it was a really fun time. But
yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to get started a little bit about your backstory. So where are you originally from, and what was it that made you want to get into the crazy world of filmmaking?
I was born in Chicago and went to Northern Illinois University with a degree in communications, which is worthless without a job. And luckily I got one. And I was in broadcasting for about 5 years, like almost every end of it. I started out in radio, and I ended up doing the weather, like the worst weather person on earth. I was really, really awful. I think people tuned in just to see what the heck I'd say. I'd switch the oceans, just really awful. But, I got it. My theory was just to keep talking. And it seemed to work. And then I ended up doing radio in Chicago, Morning Drive, and making very little money. A good company, but very, very little money. And eventually, I stopped doing that and did some commercials, and I was up against the wall because people in Chicago were saying, "You're just the voice we know. We can't put you on camera." I'm like, "The heck with you guys. I'm going to LA." And I figured I'd do some commercials, and I did. Like as soon as I got out of my car, I had an Irish Spring commercial. Manly, yes, but I like it too, which was kind of hysterical. My father liked Irish Spring, so I guess that's okay. But 8 months later, I was doing Caddyshack.
So Caddyshack was your first film that you had ever done?
Yeah.
That's insane, because you think of the cult classic that it is now.
I know.
You just jump right in, and so how did you get the part on Caddyshack?
I auditioned. I read with the casting director, and I guess it went well. And then I think I had maybe 2 more readings, and I think there was 1 more reading. And honestly, when I read the script, I went, I'll never get cast for this. 12 years of Catholic school, 4 years of Catholic girls' school, at some college, really didn't prepare me for this. But
yeah.
What the heck? I can read on this and do whatever I want because they'll never cast me. Well, they did, and then it was a question of, well, okay, let's just see how this goes. And got to the set, and I think the legends are all true and much, much more. It was like the biggest party I ever went to, the longest party I ever went to, but it was a lot of fun. It was an incredible experience. And what was wonderful was we were kind of locked up on the set with 4 of the funniest men on the planet, not counting Harold Ramis, who was just brilliant. He really was Lacey Underall. He would whisper stuff in my ear and say, "Do this." I'd go, "Why?" He'd go, "Just do it." And later on, I figured it out. But, just up against these 4 really strong, very different comedic actors. 2 were great in improv, Chevy and Bill Murray, just great improvisational actors. You had to really pay attention to follow these guys. And Rodney was just saying whatever the hell he wanted because he would just roll in, and he partied more than any of us. He had a better time, I believe. And Ted was trying to do the lines. He was hanging onto the script for dear life. And by the end of the film, he was legitimately angry with every single person there. So we all, in a way, kind of evolved into versions of our characters. So it was kind of fun.
Well, that was actually going to be my follow-up question is, what was the time on set like? Because you think of just the who's who of this film with Chevy Chase, Rodney Dangerfield, Bill Murray.
Right. Yeah.
It's, like I said, it's a cult classic, and so many people love this movie and have loved it since it was released.
Yeah.
It's just insane to think, like all these years later, that it still has the cultural impact that it still has.
It's crazy. When it was released, it kind of didn't do so well. I also saw some of the interviews from the press junket, and I can see, it didn't. Some of the you have to catch these guys right to do a great interview, and just like throwing them in there early in the morning and having them interviewed by a woman who, well, the one interview I saw was really didn't understand what Caddyshack was about, and these guys were not in any mood to explain it. So, some of the interviews were interesting. So that was that. But I'll tell you, over time, you know what I think the secret is? We were really having a good time. We weren't faking it. We were having the best time ever, most of the time. And you can't fake that. And so it's become like a song on the radio. People come up and they say, yeah, whenever it's on, I just put it on wherever it is and I just watch it. And for me, it's different. It's like watching whole movies of your crazy relatives. I mean, I was there. So it's like, yeah, I remember that. I remember that. But it's so nice to be a part of something like that.
I'm sure it has to spark so many fond memories. Like you said, it's kind of like watching home movies. You think of a certain scene and you're like, I'm sure there's a funny story, behind that
absolutely.
and everything.
I was walking past the clubhouse, and it got to the point pretty much where the script meant nothing. It just really did, or what the shots the next day really didn't affect anything. So you would just get up, roll through hair, makeup, and wardrobe, and go out there, and see what was going on. And and I was walking by the clubhouse, and Harold said, "Come over here and watch this." And I said, "Okay." And I'm looking, and this is it's far enough so I can't hear what the actor's saying, but I'm looking, going, "What the hell's he doing? I'll never be able to, match that shot." And here's an actor taking the golf club and whacking at the flowers and whacking at the flowers. I said, you can't talk, but I wanted to say, Harold, you're going to have to replant all those mums. What are you doing? It was Bill doing his scene with the mums where he's whacking at them, pretending he's winning the golf tournament. He's what was it? Was it? Do you remember? Listen, people would remember it because they know every line in the film. But Bill was pretending he's in this golf tournament, winning it, and just basically riffing. He's improvising the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. Insane. Yeah. Well, that's how good he was.
Now, it's funny because you go back and think of the classic films of that era, and I sit there and watch them, and I'm thinking, I would love to have just been on set for a day. Just one day.
Well, you had to really pay attention to be on set for one day. I mean, to work in any one of those things, you had to have your wits about you on every level because things were happening like at lightning speed. People were doing things that weren't in the film. You had to pay attention and know where the camera was the whole time. And it took a while for me to get it. But I remember the script supervisor kept running up and saying, "But you did this before." And I went, "Yeah, but we're improvising." No, we got to match the shot. I learned that on the job. how to match a shot. So it was just the greatest experience in the world, but it was I'm trying to explain it, and I'm going through in my head phrases and I'm like, no, that's politically incorrect. That's politically incorrect. So let me just say it was an experience that just took everything out of me, but I'm so glad I was a part of it. I remember seeing Animal House like a year before we shot it. And I remember thinking, God, this is a whole new kind of humor. This is like a whole different way to go. I've never seen anything like this. And a year later, I was filming with the same guys. I didn't really know that because when I get a job, I will stop watching whatever actor is in it, because I don't want to be think too much of it or be intimidated. I just want to go in there and do my job, and then later on I'll see what they've done. So I remember one point they had SNL, Saturday Night Live, on, and we were watching it while we were on the set. And then I would watch it with everybody else. But legendary parties, I think you know about that.
I've heard some stories and read some stories online.
Well, I don't think they could tell you how much was going on. It was really astonishing. And thank God I was in my 20s because I was able to get through this alive. It was quite an experience. It was as much was going on. I mean, really, they should have followed us around with a camera. Oh, they kind of did at one point. They started just filming what was happening. Because Rodney would roll through a scene and just say whatever. And Ted's trying to follow him going, wait, I got lines here, and he had no intentions of being Rodney's straight man, but a lot of times he was.
Yeah. They just kind of worked out that way. And
but the partying was pretty much every night.
I I can only imagine with the names that I'm looking at the cast list right now, and
Right.
it's I can imagine it had to have been legendary.
Yes, yes, and that was kind of an eye opener and quite a learning experience. And after being 5 years in broadcasting, where you have federal communications laws and rules to follow, I went in. Okay, we're gonna have the best scripts, the best every, and it was like a free for all and pandemonium. And it like, okay, new rules. Forget the script. Let's just pay attention to what's going on in front of me. Yeah, and the parties kind of overlapped the filming, which was it got to the point where you just, okay, what are we doing now? And that's pretty much what I looked at.
Well, I can imagine that there couldn't have been much better on the job training, because you're on
Hell
this
no.
you're with this group that is essentially throwing everything out the window, or most things out
Yeah.
the window. But I can
Yeah.
imagine it prepares you for future projects like no
Oh
other.
yeah. Well, you had to, there were some simple things like how to match a shot. I got that like in the first week, when the
Hmm.
script supervisor kept saying, "Well, you were over here when you did that. You were over there." I'm like, "Yeah, what's the difference?" No, you got to do it the same for camera. And that was the little things. And the big thing was, occasionally you get into a scene where somebody was improvising like crazy, and thank God I had a good improvisation coach before I left Los Angeles. Thank God this guy sat at me, yell at me. He was an actor named Harvey Lembeck. His son Michael became a director, and this guy would yell, Morgan, you're the straight. Stop going for the joke, because I was a disc jockey, so I'm used to doing all the talking. And this guy would say, "Stop going for the joke. You're the straight. You set it up." And he taught me to do what nobody else in my life was ever able to teach me to do: how to listen.
Hmm.
For example, the scenes with Chevy where he was improvising, sometimes we weren't getting along, and he was doing whatever he could to felt like he was trying to blow me out of the scene, and I wasn't going anywhere. You don't pick a fight with a stubborn Pollock from Chicago and expect to come out of it okay. I wasn't going anywhere. So, and that's what made a great dynamic, because the give and take in a scene, it really mattered. For example, that piano scene was 100% improvised. Did not know we were even filming until the middle of the scene, and I looked up and I saw the camera light on, and I kind of laughed to myself in the middle of the scene. And that's the only time people go, "Did you laugh?" No, you don't laugh during the scene. But when I'm doing something with Chevy and I'm looking at him like he's nuts, and I see the damn camera light on, I go, "Oh, I get it. You're filming this. Terrific."
That's insane. That
Yeah,
is absolutely insane.
one of the nicest things I've heard is a lot of people, like first responders or a lot of people in the military, like it because it's the kind of thing you can watch where it goes back to a time before 9/11, before the wars, before AIDS, before tamper-proof caps on Tylenol. It goes back to a little age of innocence where you could have a good time and just let loose and have a free for all.
Hmm.
And it's like a song on the radio. You just want to hear it again.
Yep. No, absolutely. Now, from Caddyshack, a couple of years later, Tron was released,
Uh-huh.
which was pretty revolutionary at the time.
Yes.
And I didn't see Tron until, years and years later. I mean, this was, I was born in 86. This came out in
Hmm.
82.
Right. So
I
you would have been ready to see it until, the 90s probably.
I actually saw I had heard of Tron, but had never watched it until after the sequel came out.
Okay. Yeah, that happened with a lot of people.
And then after watching Tron Legacy, I went back and watched the original one, and the
Sure.
effects especially were kind of mind blowing, especially when you think of the time period that it was made.
What they had to work with. Exactly. Yeah.
So what was it like, being on set for doing things that essentially on camera had never really been done before as far as visuals go?
Oh no, never been done. It was the exact opposite of Caddyshack. Like where everything was a free for all and there was partying. This was locked down tight on a soundstage at Disney Studio. The sound, it's like if you've seen a soundstage, they're like a giant warehouse, except this one was completely empty, painted black, zero lights. And the only lights were where you were standing and what you were doing, and you had to go from here to there, hit a mark that you couldn't look at. I had to take running steps backwards into a shot, and and I would look at the script and I go, "This doesn't make a goddamn bit of sense. What are they asking me to do? I don't get it." And I would just go in and I'd find the reality usually in the other actor's eyes, but at some point one day I came in and Steven Lisberger says, "Okay, you guys, you're on the Solar Sailor, you're crossing the Game Sea. Cindy, you're flying the ship. Go." And so I said, "Okay, I got to ask, what the hell are you talking about? There's nothing here. It's all black. There's nothing, zero. There's like a little riser. If you've done those panels, there's a little riser that people are on. And on top of that riser was basically a banquet table covered in black felt. So exactly what do you have in mind?" And I think at that point he showed me some of the graphics, which gave me some idea of what was going on. And I'm like, "Okay, I'm flying the ship. Exactly what did you have in mind?" There sits as a blank table with a black piece of felt on it. What do you have in mind? He says, just do anything. The artist will fill it in. So in my mind, I saw a soundboard because I was a sound engineer when I was in broadcasting. I saw a soundboard, and that's the thing I was using to make the ship move forward.
You look at, because I watched Tron again the other night, and just seeing what was done, I can't imagine, because we have so many good benefits of technology when it comes to filmmaking now, that thinking of how it was done back then is almost foreign completely, but you had to work with what you had and at times develop new technologies. So I think it gives, to me, an even bigger appreciation for films that were made during that time frame because of what they had to do to make it happen.
It was amazing. It was astonishing, and they brought in brilliant people to work. I mean, the cinematographer, the art director. I mean, every department was just off the charts amazing. Sid Mead designed a lot of the background. That there were several layers. They were shooting on. They were printed on Codaliths, and which are. Have you seen the size of a Codalith? It's like I'm trying about 18 inches by 12 inches. I'm trying to think of it. You'd have to look it up, but they're huge pieces of film that they were shooting on. And they would layer these pieces of film because they would layer the graphics with what really happened and hand painting things. I mean, each one of those pieces was hand painted and layered, sometimes stacks of it. The fact that, and when you see it on a big screen, it holds up vividly, beautifully.
Yeah. So I love behind the scenes featurettes of films, seeing, how the process that went into making the film happen. And this one especially because of, things like that, of coloring the film and giving it that very distinct look. Like Tron and Tron Legacy look very different, but
complete different animals almost. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, plus with the time periods that they were made, technology is just completely different. But there's something about the original that makes it stand out. Like Legacy has that kind of like a dark, sleek looking type of feel to it with the lights and everything, but Tron 1 has that. It also has that 80s charm to it, and it
has a charm. It has an innocence. It has a lot of heart too. Even though the script sometimes I didn't agree with, it holds up because that innocence against the brand new special effects just worked. And it's amazing that it was so different.
When you think about how great the effects were and everything, but a film, to me, always the story and the characters are the core and what drives the film. But Tron still does that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, and it was great to do. It was. I mean, I still don't believe that those two very different films that were just so unbelievable. I mean, if I would have thought about it ahead of time, I wouldn't have known what to tell you what was going to happen. I couldn't have imagined. I couldn't have predicted it. And the fact that they both held up over time and that they're both doing so well, it just speaks to all the wonderful people who are involved and really, really worked hard on it and put everything into it. And you can't phone this in. And you can't. When I did the first press junket, people were saying me, because it was hard to explain in brand new markets, because I go from city to city to try to explain what this was like. And I finally said, okay. You remember The Wizard of Oz? How Dorothy was in this black and white world, and then something happened and she was blown into this wonderful world of vivid color, and all the people she kind of knew in the other world were in this world? Well, it's a lot like that. Because that was the only thing that people could relate to. And then they'd say, well, aren't you worried you'd be replaced by computers? I said, no, I can do something computers can't. And they said, what? I said, I can make mistakes. And therein lies your film, right there. It's in those little nuances, those little mistakes, those little human elements that makes a film.
Well, I think Caddyshack and Tron especially, they come from I've always been drawn, as long as I can remember being a fan of movies, there's
Hmm.
something about the 80s era of film that stands out like no other. With Caddyshack, Tron, and even other movies like The Breakfast
I can't
Club.
describe it because I was in it. You tell me.
Well, no, they just have that very unique type of charm that to me no
Hmm.
other era of films have.
Hmm.
Because I've gone back and I've watched movies from the 70s, from the 60s,
Right.
even older, and even current movies now. The 80s movies to me of that era have always stood
Hmm.
out to me, and it's because of the unique charm that the actors bring through the characters to the
Yeah.
screen.
There was a lot of human element. It was less about 70s. I think was a much more serious time, and the 80s it was like all bets are off. Just
Hmm.
go in there and what you're going to do. And I don't know. It was pretty good. I mean, I was rarely directed. Usually, I would come in and I would. The way I work is I would. A lot of people like to rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. To me, that would just choke the life out of me. I see it in my head. I can see. I don't memorize lines. I memorize ideas in sequence. I can see the whole scene. I get in the morning. I see what my marks are. Okay, I got it. And once in a while, the director will say, "Well, what about the?" Harold directed me. He was Lacey, so he'd give me ideas. And I worked with Irvin Kershner on Amazing Stories, and he gave me some ideas, but not too often. Usually, you go in and you're kind of prepared. You know the
Hmm.
scene,
Yeah.
or else. You know.
So, as we start to wrap up here, I did want to ask. So, we mentioned both Caddyshack and Tron. Do you
Hmm.
have a certain like on-set story or ones that you could tell on the podcast that
Ah,
really stand out to you as far as like being above any other? Like your favorite on-set stories from either film?
I'm trying to think. In Tron, it would have to be running through Shiva Lab. They let us into an actual lab in Northern California, and I mean this was this huge. To be specific, you have to look it up. But they had lasers that were actually real, and we were in this lab and running through here. And I remember stepping out of the lab, and I'm thinking, oh well, it's just another day of work. And I'm looking, okay, I'm standing here. There's the makeup trailer. I got to get touched up, and I saw this little tape around an area that was about a foot tall, and you're just like, yeah, I can cut across this. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So I just start walking, and all of a sudden they went stop, and I'm like, huh? And all these guys came out of nowhere in like these white coats and stuff, and they were just like, "Don't move, don't move. Okay, we're gonna need your shoes." And I'm like, "What the hell?" This was such a lockdown government facility that whatever was in that area, they needed my shoes for. I got them back later. I got doubles back later,
Oh, well, that's
but
good.
so and Bruce Logan, who was a cinematographer, I mean, he's great. He's well known. He blew up the Death Star for Christ's sake, but he wasn't allowed to even go to the bathroom by himself because he wasn't a U.S. citizen.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, yeah. So he had people following him into. So it was a government facility, and we were in there, and with the Disney name, we got in there, and it got done. But that was pretty amazing. And Caddyshack, well, the love scene between Chevy and I, the oil massage scene, we were fighting.
Really?
We were not speaking to each other, and I wouldn't. Well, he said a couple things. I said a couple things. He walked. And Harold Ramis said, apologize. I said, no, you heard what he said. And so Harold Ramis is camp counselor trying to get us back on the set at the same time at the same place. And Chevy comes in and goes, okay, I'm going to shoot two masters. And in the middle of it, you can see him and he starts ad-libbing his butt off. And you can see my eyes and I'm just taking it all in. And he dumps that bottle of oil on my back. Not a mistake,
Hmm.
because after that's done, you can't reset the scene.
Right.
It would take an hour or more, and they didn't have that. So that was like saying, I've shot all I'm going to shoot, and I'm like, all right, Buster, I'm not going anywhere. Go ahead. And honestly, I that scene turned out to be one of the best we did because love and hate are closer than you think, and it really wasn't either. But having to go up against somebody like that who's improvising, phew.
I'm picturing Harold Ramis playing mediator between you two, and it sounds like a funny film all in itself.
Man, I mean, Harold was the only one because he was driving the bus. He was the only one who wasn't partying like crazy. And probably until the last day. I heard they had to carry him back to his room, but who knows?
Oh no.
But well, he was exhausted. I mean, we were going day and night. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
because
absolutely.
it would start early in the morning, shoot all day, and then at nighttime they're looking through the footage. They had an editing room right in the hotel where we were staying, and he's looking at the dailies to see if everything matches, because then there wasn't any video playback,
Hmm.
so you had to do it by eye and by guess. And that's a hard way of measuring or balancing out. But Harold was really, really brilliant at it. He just really got it. He held it all together, and held us together. In fact, that after that scene, that was the only time Chubby and I, in fact, they had a double room that they had for screenings, and I came in one and Chubby was on the other. I didn't even know he was coming, and I slipped into dailies to sit. I'm like, oh my god, how badly did this go? But there was a wonderful editor, Bill Caruth, who's still a friend of mine. He teaches at Florida State University, which is
Oh cool.
right near Pensacon, and he's the editor of Caddyshack. He's a professor in residence up there, and he was just really he was a third generation film editor. He was working for his father, handing him those little trims of film during Gentlemen Prefer Blondes,
That's
and
crazy.
his mom was one of the people who used to do the water ballets in the old 40s movies.
Hmm.
And who do you think choreographed the water ballet? I'll bet you anything it was Bill. Because he was a little kid watching his mom
Hmm.
doing this. And we had a water ballet in that film.
It's crazy how that all works out.
It worked out beautifully. And I'm
Yeah.
so happy to be a part of it.
No, I can only imagine. Well, you mentioned Pensacon, so we actually have Pensacon coming up. It's February 28th through March 1st. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
at the Pensacola Bay Center in downtown Pensacola, and I know it's your very first time coming to Pensacon, so it should be
I
a lot
know.
of
I'm
fun.
so excited. This is going to be great.
Now, Pensacon, we were talking a little bit before we started doing the interview, but Pensacon has really grown in the last 6 years, 5 to 6 years, because it was essentially just in the Bay Center and the hotel that's across the street. But
Uh-huh.
it's grown so much that they actually use multiple venues that are
So cool.
they're located around the area. And what's cool is downtown specifically, they'll model the restaurants or bars after things in pop culture. So say like last year
You're kidding.
we have this bar downtown called Perfect Plain Brewery. They
Uh-huh.
they remodeled themselves to look like Middle Earth from Lord of the Rings for
Oh my
Pensacon
gosh,
weekend.
that's great.
And we have a seafood restaurant that will do like a Harry Potter party. There's another that does Star Wars. So the whole town
Wow.
really, and you'll see it when you get to the airport. It's rebranded from Pensacola International Airport to Intergalactic Airport.
Get out of here. That is so cool.
It's great. It's
I'm
really. I'm,
so
I'm
glad.
excited. I'm excited for you to see it. No, it's a really really fun time.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm so glad you told me all about it. It sounds like a great show. I'm guessing no livestock this time. There won't be any ducks or chipmunks dressed up in clothes, right?
I can't promise that, but we'll see. No, people do dress up. Like it's
The
seeing.
people dress up. I'm looking forward to that. That's probably one of the best times ever. I mean, it's like Halloween for grown-ups or Disneyland for grown-ups.
Well, people spend so much time and effort into building these costumes. Like it's absolutely insane.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I mean, yeah. I mean, some of them take so much effort and creativity and just and it's just astonishing. I'm watching that. That's the best part of my day.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a very fun time.
I'm looking forward to it. And what are you coming as? A moderator?
Um, I'll have a blazer on at some point
Oh,
whenever I do panels. I actually I've never done cosplay before, which is
really? I don't think I have to. Just,
yeah, you're yourself.
yeah. I've done a lot of that. But so you're going to be a moderator dressed in a blazer? Well, you'll be running around the show. I got a feeling doing a few things.
Yeah, and I'll definitely stop by and say hello and everything. I'm looking
Good.
forward to it. Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Well, thank you so very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Last thing I want to ask you before we get out of here, do you have a website or social media you'd like to plug so the
I was
listeners can follow you?
just going to plug that. I'm in the middle of redesigning cindymorgan.com. And I got hacked really hard about 6 weeks ago and got some of my pages back, a couple of my pages got eaten up in the middle of recovering that. But yeah, don't go around doing a movie like Tron and think you won't be hacked. So, or at least there'll be an attempt. But I've got VPNs and my own Wi-Fi, and still, I'm learning all kinds of new words. And it was wonderful to be a part of Tron because now I'm starting to figure out what I was saying 40 years ago.
That's awesome. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview, and look forward to meeting you at Pensacon.
Thank you so much. I'll see you there.